Good evening and welcome to this edition of Hands Off. I'm your host, Red Hackett. This is a special edition of Hands Off, and that is because it is a special two-parter. In an article in the Philadelphia Inquirer this past February, there was a story there in regards to the Glen Mills School. It opened up the eye of institutional abuse, a reform school that had allegations of students being abused. And it opened up some dialogue and some questions. And my guest here tonight is going to support some of those questions and talk about his story. Please welcome to the show, Josh Hubler.
Hi.
Josh, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
So I kind of want to just not jump right into it, but sort of jump right into it. Let's just talk about what type of an institution that the Glen Mills School was, which was, as they titled it, a school for juvenile delinquents, and or reform school. And just to be clear, that's not the school that you had attended.
No.
But we'll talk about where you had actually ended up, which was through the Academy at Ivory Ridge, among other names. So, but first, let's talk about the events that kind of led up to that. Talk about you growing up, childhood, how you got to that point, and we'll just follow it from there.
Okay, so quick breakdown on that. My mom had me when she was 19. She had left home at 17, so didn't even finish high school, and she married my dad at a very young age. She had me when she was 19. My parents got divorced when I was 3.5.
Okay.
So my mom left my dad with basically nothing and moved in with my grandmom.
Okay.
She was actually my great-grandmom. And that was kind of where like everything started. So my dad left at 3.5. That's probably my first memory is my dad leaving.
Okay.
Progressed a little longer. My mom had gotten remarried to my first stepdad.
Okay.
We'll just call him Alex. And their marriage didn't last very long either. We had moved and changed and, moved out of my grandmom's house and all that, but my mom was trying to better her life. So she was, went back to school. She got her nursing degree through the Our Lady of Lourdes program, which was, an incredible achievement as a single mom, doing all that for, for her, but for us and, taking care of her kids. And she worked as a labor and delivery nurse. And after my first stepdad left, they got divorced. My mom had, basically had to do it all on her own. So she moved us back to the town of Stratford where my grandmom had originally lived. And she bought a house on her own. And she decided, because of her passion for labor and delivery, that she wanted to become a midwife and started training for a midwifery program. Okay. So meanwhile, the whole time my mom's working 3 jobs, my elderly great-grandmother is, kind of filling in that role of, parent, and my grandmom was in her, I guess, probably 80s at the time. Okay. So I was a bit of a loose cannon. Okay. I had no positive male role models in my life and was kind of running the streets. I got introduced to the drugs and, bad. I wouldn't so much say bad, but I was on a path to where it looked like I was going to end in jail or dead, before 18.
And you're how old at this point?
This was basically it really kind of started ramping up around 10, 11, and then by the time I was 15, I was completely out of control.
Okay. So honestly, nothing that is too crazy or out of the ordinary for many kids under the same situations.
Yeah, I was carrying, a firearm. I was, dealing drugs and moderately using drugs at the time. I had just started having sex and stuff like that. Definitely not things that I should have been doing as a 15-year-old child, but at the same time, I kind of felt like I was older than I really was anyway, and because I had been in that lifestyle and kind of took over that role of man of the house and everything, it was just I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And my grandma wasn't old enough to stop me, and my mom wasn't around enough to really deal with it all.
In an interest to really kind of do right by you and do the best thing for you, your mother seeks out an organization, an institution that on the surface had the appearance that it would be almost like a self-empowerment improvement. So let's talk about where that started out.
Okay.
And I mean, I can say the name Casa by the Sea.
Yeah,
so you might want to explain that a little
my
bit
first
more.
facility, was in Casa by the Sea. It was in Ensenada, in Baja California, which is Mexico. I was there for 3 months. After my freshman year of high school, I was scheduled to finish, we were living in Stratford, so I was going to finish middle school, go to Sterling, and the program that I was going to be in Sterling was for troubled, children, basically, separate, entity basically, where they take all the troubled kids and they just drop them in a classroom and they do whatever they want all day, but it wasn't going to be real school. And my mom was like, absolutely not. So she sent me to Paul VI for my freshman year of high school.
Okay.
I think I passed one class the entire year.
Okay.
And that's when, things were really kind of getting out of hand. I wasn't listening at all. I would get up at 10 o'clock in the morning, take the speed line into school, show up when I felt like, left when I felt like, and all that. So my mom had decided to send me away. And Casa by the Sea was the first program in a group of programs that was ran by an organization called WASP. So it was WWASP. I think that stood for Worldwide Association of Specialty Programs. Is that right?
Worldwide Assessment of Specialty Programs.
Okay,
correct.
so it's a group of facilities ran by a group of Mormons based out of Utah. So I was in Mexico, and Mexico actually wasn't that bad. As far as the structure there, it was a lot more lax than when I went to Academy in Ivy Ridge, because the guards there, which, they had their own nomenclature, words for this. So instead of calling them guards, they would call them like dorm parents. And instead of calling it like your unit, they would call it your family and stuff like that. But it was basically ran by the students at that point, because most of the guards only spoke Spanish. So they weren't really like, moderating. They were just pretty much making sure that we didn't, fist fight and kill each other and stuff along those lines. So Mexico wasn't too bad, because it was ran by the other kids and everybody was just trying to get by and get another day. I looked it up, and I thought it was September 11th, but it was actually September 10th that the federales had came into the facility and decided that they were going to shut it down. So September 11th was actually the first day that we kind of started rioting and burning buildings down, ransacking the facility.
And these are people doing this?
These are all the other students with me,
Okay.
me, myself, and all these other students that are, ransacking the facility, and, there's no structure at this point now. The federales are only there to guard, to make sure that we don't leave the facility, because we're all on student visas.
Okay.
And we're all being deported from the country of Mexico. So they called our parents. They said, you have 72 hours to pick up your kids, or we're dropping them off at the border at Tijuana. And my mom came and got me. And she had a friend that lived in San Diego, and the friend came, with her down to pick me up, and I spent the night overnight at my mom's friend's house, and kind of was hoping that was going to be it.
So that's what I was going to say. Is I'm sure that at that point you're thinking, this is it. This didn't work.
Like, it didn't, and not that it didn't work. Like, I honestly feel like I really grasped a lesson and like saw that I should have been doing better. Like, I felt like I had learned my lesson at that point. Like, this is what happens when you go down this road, and if had I left and went home at that point, I might have turned it all around. I might have slipped right back into old patterns at the same time too, but I really feel like I took a lot away from that facility and had kind of learned my lesson. So it was like, I was ready to go home and turn it all around.
So would it be safe to say in this statement that your nightmare was just about to begin?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I thought Mexico was tough because, I was away from my family. The only communication we had back and forth was letters. There was, bad aspects of it. I got a tapeworm, lost a ton of weight. The medication that they used to get rid of the tapeworm has destroyed my stomach lining to this day. There were still brainwashing seminars, which, I'm sure we'll go into later, but my first one took place while I was in Mexico.
And so at this point, you find out you're going to get transferred to...
Yeah, so I didn't even have 24 hours out.
Okay.
I was out for maybe 18 hours. Like my mom had picked me up. We had driven up. We had dinner. We had went to Walmart or Target and got some like supplies because a lot of my stuff got left at the facility. So that stuff wasn't like being brought back with me or whatever. And my mom had told me like, okay, now you're going to Academy in Ivy Ridge in upstate New York. And when she had first discussed these programs, these were the two that were on the table, was Academy in Ivy Ridge and the Casa by the Sea in Mexico.
Both of which are part of the same organization.
Are the same organization, and Mexico was cheaper. And at the time, my stepdad was doing his residency in Southern California. So this is my new stepdad, who's my current stepdad, John, great man. But he was doing his residency, and my mom was they were kind of debating whether he was going to stay out in California after he finished his residency and like move the family out there and all that. So it seemed like a good idea to send me to Mexico where it was a little bit cheaper. I mean, being a single mom and trying to maintain, still taking care of my sister and a household and then paying all this money to ship me off to, they called it a behavior modification boarding school or a boarding school of the future.
And that is what leads you to the front doors of Ivy Ridge.
Of Ivy Ridge, yeah.
All right, I'm going to pause right here because
Okay.
we're going to take a break.
Okay.
When we come back, we're going to talk about what happens when he actually goes into that facility and what that was like.
Okay.
So we'll be right back.
RVN TV is a platform for people of any industry to share their story. Over 285,000 viewers are tuning in to RVN TV shows monthly. We guarantee a great experience that you'll be sharing with everyone you know while increasing your personal and company's brand awareness. But what is your brand? According to Forbes, it's a combination of your logo, your product, your design and feel, and your personality. Did you know that aside from being a guest, we offer even more opportunity to boost your brand? Adding your company logo and website on screen during your interview will allow viewers to recognize your brand instantly. Incorporating images and video clips is another great way to showcase your product during your live segment. Let viewers see how good you really are. And most importantly, there's you and your interview. For less than the cost of a newspaper, direct mail, or a magazine ad, you can leave our studio and within 48 hours have a permanent digital copy of your live segment to link to your social media, embed into your company website, or use in email marketing. Investing in your brand is so very important, and we can't wait to have you as a guest.
With Josh Hubler, and it's a special edition of Hands Off, and we are talking about the school at Ivy Ridge. As they said, it was the boarding school of the future, and I can tell you at the materials that I looked up, you would read this material and you would think that this is exactly what it was going to be, that it was going to be this school that was going to assist you, to put you on the path of a better life. And so now we're going to ask you, tell us what that was really like.
So I remember the first night getting there after a long flight across the country from, Southern California to upstate New York. And we're talking all the way upstate New York. St. Lawrence River is out my window. I can see Canada from the other side. So we're like way up in the middle of the sticks. It was freezing. And the first night I slept on the floor with like a sheet on a mattress on the floor in the hallway of the area where they called like basically they were cells, but they called them dorms. The only difference between that and a jail cell was there was no, doors. The windows were basically like a kind of sheet metal with holes in it, but no bars. And the doors, there were no doors. So there was a door, but it was never open or closed. Like it stayed open 24 hours a day. Yeah, so I processed in the next morning, going on a very little sleep, and realized it was going to be a way different facility. So the structure was similar to what I think Mexico was supposed to be, but not, because we're in America and there's different rules and all that. It was a lot different, structure-wise, way more strict. And yeah, like my first week was pretty tough. I remember writing a journal to my mom, basically begging to get out of there.
Sure.
And during that time, it just so happened that the same weekend that I was being processed in that first week, my mom was going away to her first seminar.
Okay.
So
in coordination with the school?
In coordination with the program, yeah. So she was going to her first seminar. I think hers was in somewhere in North Jersey, but in some, hotel ballroom. And when she got out, she was a changed person. She was committed to me graduating the program. I was supposed to do whatever these people said and follow the program, and I'm not taking you home until you graduate. And
Which
I heard that
I'm going to
all
talk
the time.
about that as we move through into the next edition of this. So tell me, or tell us, what they did, how they performed, what was that like in terms of the structure that they put you through? You talked about brainwashing, you talked about different rooms.
Yeah, there was basically the structure of the facility kind of ran like I guess like a military school, I would kind of imagine. So you wake up at the same time every day. You go through the same procedures every day. Wake up, you got 10 minutes to get ready in the morning. And this is you and all the 30 people that are sharing, 4 bathroom stalls with no doors on them. And, 4 sinks, and everybody's trying to brush their teeth and use the bathroom. And it's kind of like a dash to get everything done in the morning. Then you're out, dressed in your uniform. And that's the other thing, is they really put on a nice show. So they had us in these, sweater vests or suit jackets and ties and all that to really make it look like when parents came to visit the facility that this was a nice place to be.
That's what you're in.
Yeah. So
what are you in when parents are not there?
You're in there. You're in that all the time. Yeah.
Okay.
There was no time where you were not in uniform unless you were in gym class, which they had a whole different uniform for. But basically, that was part of the facade that this is such a great facility because, we're in these nice uniforms and, walking in an orderly line everywhere we go, and you have that kind of structure. So you would wake up, you would do breakfast, we would do school. It was a program called Switched On Schoolhouse that was ran out of Utah.
Yep.
The facility that in New York was not accredited. So that was the original reason why they got shut down.
Okay.
They were shut down in 2009, I believe, because of the unaccreditation. They've been class action sued. A lot of people lost their credits. I was lucky enough that I didn't graduate that facility. So the credits that I had transferred to the high school that I winded up going to in Kentucky, and I finished and graduated with a high school diploma.
So talk about what you mean when you say a brainwashing seminar.
Okay, so a brainwashing seminar, there's different levels of seminars, but from what I remember, the first 3 were orientation, discovery, and focus. These are seminars that last 3 days long. Because you're so used to a schedule and you're used to, eating at certain times during the day, going to bed at certain times, sleeping, waking up at certain times every day, what they would do is change that schedule completely. So they would keep you awake later, then you would have homework assignments you had to complete once you got back to your dorms, and then from there you would go wake up early to go back to seminar the next morning. And then instead of getting like 3 meals a day, they might do, 2 meals a day or 3 small meals a day or whatever. It wasn't the same structure at all. And then they would so physically you're being broken down during this time, and then mentally they're putting you through, different obstacles and telling you, to talk about certain things. And the only way to move up in the program was to complete the seminars. So if you wanted to get any kind of like privileges, like level 3's privilege was a phone call and a watch. You didn't actually start getting real privileges until you got level 4. Level 2, you had to finish orientation and have 200 points because it was a points-based program, and then your reward for that was you got a candy bar once a week.
How much of the brainwashing seminars or activities do you recall?
Some I remember specifically, and some I feel like I've totally tried to block out altogether.
So far we have that. We have a denial of food, and was there physical abuse that took place?
So there was on different scenarios. So I had 3 different scenarios where I was physically abused by staff members. 2 of them were restrained for me being basically like not following the rules, like I would refuse to do something, or I was being loud or screaming or cursing or whatever, and I was restrained 2 times from that. And then once I was in intervention, which is basically, the structure of it is there was like a study hall, which is basically the equivalent of detention. You sit in there, they play, motivational speaker tapes, the whole time you're in there. And then sometimes they made you write. So it kind of got the nickname worksheets because you would fill out basically copying this etiquette sheet on like manners and rules. So you would copy that, and you would sit in there for however long they deemed, you needed to be in there. The next step was intervention. Intervention had 3 rooms. 2 of them had cameras and 1 did not. If you got into the no camera room, that means that you were getting a beating.
Okay.
And, they basically just abused you until you stopped moving.
And what was the frequency, to the best of your recollection, that, let's just call that room 3?
Okay. How often was it used?
Correct.
I would say just about on a daily basis.
Okay.
Maybe not so much to a daily basis, but at least, 3 times a week,
Right.
where it was used on somebody.
Okay. And as you had described, there were a couple times where you were not necessarily conforming to what they wanted, and the repercussion was that.
So the repercussion is they send you to intervention.
Okay.
The particular time when I was taken to the no camera room in intervention was when I was being basically flipping out while I was already in intervention. So I was in one of the camera rooms and they pulled me out, threw me in the other one, and then that's when the abuse started.
Okay. And this is not something that was described in the plan in terms of disciplinary action. It may have been titled something else.
So from what I remember, my mom did sign a form basically giving away 51% of her custody of me while I was in the facility so that they could do what they needed to do. And I believe that it might have been mentioned that restraining or stopping you from doing bodily harm to yourself or another, person would be something that the facility would do in a case like that. But
that's very different than...
Yeah, it definitely wasn't, described in the manner that it went down.
And there were also issues within the institution with other individuals.
Oh, absolutely. It's just like any group where you put so many people together and you're living day to day and you have to deal with their idiosyncrasies and whatnot. And there was, I remember a specific tradition in my unit was, a blanket party. So on your anniversary every year, somebody would throw a blanket over your head, usually at the end of the night, right before, they shut everything down. It was called shutdown at the end of the night. So right before shutdown, and then, 5 or 6 guys would pile into your room and, beat you up. So, I mean, not so many, there wasn't so much even a negative motivation about it. It was just kind of something that we all did.
Okay.
So it was a hazing ritual or, whatever. When you got to upper level status, I remember that was part of the hazing ritual. Just when you became an upper level, which was level 4 to 6, that was the first thing that happened. Your first night in, they basically jumped you in like you would be jumped into a gang. And that's how you got initiated into upper level status.
Okay. And what is it that are you learning anything at this point other than to survive?
No, I think that the seminars themselves had a positive message, but because of the way I was in the facility, I couldn't hear that message at all. I do remember specific things and later on in life hearing them in motivational books or self-help books or whatever, they were trying to teach it, but at the way that they were teaching it, it wasn't coming through to us. So, I mean, there was positive aspects of it, but it wasn't,
Right.
it just, you couldn't absorb it because you were in that, like, that survival mode where you were just trying to
Right.
get by and survive to the next day. As far as school, we didn't learn anything.
Okay.
Switched on Schoolhouses was all based on a religious, why is the sky blue? Because God made it blue.
Okay.
It was all on computers, and we all cheated through the entire process.
Okay.
So,
So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that you are 15, 16 years old at this point,
Yep.
navigating your way through this, with dealing with issues that you probably had never had to encounter before this.
I mean, survival, like the survival issues that I was dealing with,
Right.
and then trying to maintain and at the same time try to keep your sanity because,
Yeah.
it's real easy to just like go crazy and, give everything up. And you're trying to work your way through this program because my mom would say in every letter that I got on Monday and Wednesday when we got letters, you have to graduate the program to be able to leave.
Right. So graduation would essentially be what, till you were 18?
Those are your two options. So it's either graduate, which is whenever it takes, you to get through all the seminars, all of the levels, get voted up to each level. You have to get so many different approvals and do so many things in the facility to show that, you were kind of, an influence in the facility, and that's why you deserve to be able to move up to the next level. And so you had to go through those levels to get up to the last part where you would go through the PC3, which is Parent-Child 3. It was
Right.
the third seminar you would do with your parents, and then you signed your home contract, and after that you went home.
Right. So before we end this edition of this, I just want to point out that you are at least trying to communicate with your mother what is going on. And I'm sure at that point you're asking her, get me out of here.
Yeah.
To the best that you possibly can, obviously. But it wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to happen. And lo and behold, as you're coming to, I don't know, what was it, year 2? Something begins to happen, and it starts the process of you possibly getting out, but you're really not 100% sure what's going on, correct?
No, I had known that I was like, that was my only way out. And so I started to try to like conform to the program at that point and tried to like work my way up the levels and, go through the seminars and just, instead of it being all survival, it was like, all right, how can I get through this and still, and be able
Right.
to get out to the free world again.
Sure.
Without being 18.
Right. All right, so we'll end it here.
Okay.
In our next episode of Hands Off, we're going to find out from Josh how he actually got out of the program and what it has been like post Ivy Ridge. So we'll pick it back up there. Josh, thank you so far, telling your story, and we look forward to the rest of this. You'll be amazed.